What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Movies That Make You podcast, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're a catalyst for meaningful conversations. I'm Jonathan Sprang, and I go by Sprang. And most weeks, we dive into movies to watch in preparation for the new releases hitting theaters. But we don't stop there. We explore the morals, the deeper ideas, and the life lessons that these films have to offer. This week, I've got my brother-in-law Kevin on the episode, and we're talking all things Robin Williams. It's hard to believe that Robin's passing was 10 years ago, so we kind of touch on that and also just touch on how many incredible characters that this guy played and how much he impacted our lives from the times we were young until even today. Hope you enjoyed the episode. You can follow our movie journey and join the conversation on Instagram at Movies That Make You, and check out our lists on Letterboxd at I Am Spring. You'll find the movies that make you laugh, the movies that make you cry, the movies that make you scream, and everything in between. We love hearing from you, so drop us a message and let us know what movies have made an impact on your life. Before we dive into this week's episode, here's a sneak peek of the next 4 weeks on the Movies That Make You podcast. Next week, we're going to be gearing up for Wicked. To do that, we watched The Wizard of Oz with the boys and my parents, and we had everybody on the podcast to have a discussion. It was magnificent. So excited for this episode. We really dive into some really deep ideas with the kids. So lots of fun. The week after that, we're going to be doing an episode to gear up for Gladiator 2. So Christian and I will be talking about Gladiator and also Spartacus, another sword and sandal film around the same idea. The week after that, we're going to be gearing up for Moana 2 being released in theaters. So we're going to watch Moana, but we're also going to talk through not just Moana, but other Disney characters that the boys liked growing up, and even Christian and I, what Disney characters stood out for us as our Disney heroes. The week after that, we're going to have a special episode. I'm going to have another guest on, a friend of mine who was born in 1998. We're going to be talking about the top movies of 1999. It's the 25th anniversary of these films, and so he's going to bring his perspective as someone who was 1 year old when these movies came out. I'm super stoked for this conversation. So if you were alive in 1999, you don't want to miss this episode. Hope those episodes excite you. So without further ado, let's get to the podcast. We are back with another episode of the Movies That Make You podcast. I am Sprang, and I'm joined by my brother-in-law and good friend, Kevin. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing awesome, Jonathan. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to have this conversation with you today because, I mean, we talk movies all the time. Nearly every time we get together, we're movies coming into that conversation. At least one. And many times it's a multitude of movies. And for those of you listening, and I talk about marathons that I do on a quarterly basis, this is the guy. You're the guy that we do the marathons with. Do you remember the impetus of that? Like, where did that come from? Like,
wow.
what I know the movies we watched the first time, but I don't remember if it.
I think that we were talking about movies in general, and then it just came up in conversation that how cool it would be to watch an entire series of movies, or and I don't even remember exactly where the conversation started, but it was probably something around, one of these days I'm going to rewatch whatever X. And knowing you, it was probably The Matrix.
It was, yeah.
But whether that be the Harry Potter, or the Hunger Games, or the Lord of the Rings, if we had a full 6 days to watch them back to back, whatever, but something like that, because I think I have a tendency to watch a movie and then watch pieces of a movie again as they come on TV, but I'm always longing a little bit to remember what it's like to see them the first time. And watching movies like that, even if I've seen them multiple times, watching them with someone like you that's a true movie buff, it's a different experience with the conversation. So
yeah, for sure.
I can pause it and talk to you, and you don't get annoyed. My wife gets annoyed.
For sure. Yeah, Matrix was the first one, and then we did the John Wick series at one point. That was a little bit too much for one sitting. So yeah, we had started kind of just doing, hey, let's do a series and do those three, do a trilogy. And then it kind of broke up into, all right, let's do like a theme of movies. And that just kind of got me all jacked up and jazzed. And I just put a whole bunch of stuff out there. You've done some stuff out there. So we just have this running list of ideas for a trilogy of movies.
And we're going to have to live to 90 to get through that list.
Exactly. Or we're just going to have to get married. So we just have a reason to be together all the time.
I guess we have to tell the wives, sorry, ladies.
Sorry, I've got a partner that I'm watching movies with all the time. Which is the funny enough, Kristen.
A work wife, movie wife.
There you go, movie wife, yeah. Kristen wasn't the biggest movie person before we met, but she's become someone that really enjoys the movies. And even the October stuff when we're watching all these horror movies, like
Mhm.
she's not a big horror fan, but she's enjoying some of the ones that we're watching. And I don't know if you got to catch it, but she had so much fun talking about the top 5 indie horror films that she liked. And then we just recorded the top 10 that was dropped last week, right before this episode. So it's fun to see her kind of
The
get
two top 5 lists that you just posted on Facebook, I think, where her number 2 was Midsummer, whatever.
yes,
That one,
that's the
that
indie films. And then as of this recording, it would be the week before, but next week is our top 10 horror films that we like of all time. And then
of all time.
we actually like rank them to make our list together. So it was funny.
Aw,
We only had 2 that were the same.
the couple that screams together stays together.
Yes, yes. So yeah, so it's been fun. I mean, we've branched out a little bit, but I talked to you about doing the podcast, and you said, "Hey, what would be a topic that you would want to talk about?" What did you say?
Well, I said that it would be hard for me to dive into one movie for that length of time because the movies that I know backward and forward are the movies that it's kind of trite. I mean, it's the Gladiator, Caddyshack,
Holy
Animal
Grail.
House, Monty Python and the
Yeah.
Holy Grail, Shawshank Redemption. I mean, it's
Mhm.
the list of fantastic movies, but they've been beaten to death.
Sure.
I mean, we're not gonna come up with anything that is truly profound. We may not come up with anything truly profound here,
Right,
but
right.
we still at least by coming with some category of movies
Mhm.
and then thinking about what we do with the marathons,
Mhm.
how to link certain movies. And so when we started talking about our favorite actors and actresses and favorite experiences movie watching, it kind of occurred to me that I really would rather do something around a particular actor. And when I started trying to narrow that list down, it actually didn't take me that long
Mhm.
because I found myself gravitating to someone that was every character is relatable,
Mhm.
and maybe that's not a personality trait that you share, but it's still, you know what? I either know someone like that, I something like that resonates with me, or I would like to know someone like that rather than a character that feels, an action star. Okay, that's very entertaining, but that's not. There's nothing authentic about that.
Yeah.
But I do believe that Robin Williams, in every role he takes, the overwhelming majority of the roles that
Yes.
he took
Yeah.
was really authentic.
Yeah,
Yes,
a human being.
very human.
And
Good, bad.
one of the movies that we were going to talk about, I actually watched today because I said I was going to watch it, and I can't wait to tell you about it because I know you haven't seen it. But I'm not going to give spoilers or anything. But just the premise is just like, oh my gosh, it's really interesting. So very excited. Yeah. So Robin Williams, we ended up doing a marathon that included 2 movies I hadn't seen and 1 movie you hadn't seen,
Correct.
and so those are going to come up later as well. But like, I definitely relate to Robin Williams too. I think for me, we'll get to the movies, but it actually started before movies is where I got introduced to Robin Williams, and it was when I was a kid and watching Mork and Mindy on TV. That was my first introduction to Robin Williams as an actor, not knowing what stand up comedy was at 6 years old or whatever. Whenever those re-airs were showing,
Is that the first shot of making me feel old?
it's the only. It's not a shot. It's just I'm just trying to tell the
It's just,
truth. It's just
it's
reality.
it's just time, Kevin. It's just time, just the way it works.
And so that's what and Nanu that was all I knew of him. And but that show also, while it was quirky and silly, there was a lot of heart. Even as a kid, I don't remember a single episode, but I remember the feeling of watching the show that there's something more substantial here than just a silly alien from outer space, right? So where did you gotta get introduced to Robin Williams?
Okay, so you poked me once, and now you throw me a softball question that makes me feel old because my first exposure to him was not Mork and Mindy. It was Happy Days, where Mork was actually introduced.
Nice.
So for the spinoff,
Yeah.
but yes, quirky, completely unique, way out there, but truly a sympathetic character, very genuine, someone that it's not just about laughing
Mhm.
at him. Anyone that has ever felt awkward in a room or just like, well, I don't know that I fit in great in this crowd, you identified with that character. And he was funny.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The physical humor, everything about it was a character that had never been seen.
Yeah.
And for those that aren't old enough to remember Happy Days, it was a comedy, but it was about a very classic 1950s
Mhm.
family, very straight laced, very normal quote unquote stereotypical Midwestern family in Milwaukee. And so all of the family roles are very well defined and
Mhm.
life is exactly what you think it's supposed to be. And they have little things that make you laugh. And then here comes this character that was not a main character. He showed up occasionally, but
Yeah.
just turned everything upside down.
Yeah, and I do remember Happy Days. I've seen plenty of episodes of Happy Days
Yeah, but you saw them reruns in 1985.
and the Andy Griffith Show. I mean, come on, like I know him
just
before he was,
just because you have Turner Classic
Week at
Movies or
Night,
whatever, A&E on TV. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's he made a name from, or he kind of became a household name, I would guess you would say, from
Yes.
that. But I mean, I've seen so much of his those little clips of his stand up or interviews or whatever, and for those of you that are kind of fans of the podcast and you follow us on the Instagram, I've just been keeping a catalog of Robin Williams clips that I'm just going to start dropping 2 or 3 a day this week because there's just so much good content out there for this, just to show his heart, to show his humor. I think one of my favorite ones is where he's talking about the golf, like the creation of the game of golf and
Yes.
how stupid it is.
Yep.
It's just like, no,
One
we're
of
gonna
my
do it
favorites.
18 times,
Yeah,
just like
it's
it's just
awesome.
the ability to like, and I think that's where the great comedy comes from, is someone that can take something that's so normal that we perceive as being normal and then just poke holes in it as many times as you can to show the ludicrousness of it. I think one of the recent examples of that is Nate Berkowitz on
Yes.
SNL and being George Washington, say
Yep.
America's going to be great because we're going to have a different measuring system, and they're asking all these simple
Yep.
questions like, so like what, so like 10 increments of 10, no, it's 12
Yeah, it's like
inches to a foot.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so how many to a mile, like 1,000? No.
Nobody knows.
It's just that kind of humor of being able to take something that's so commonplace, and like I see some of that in the way that Robin Williams' mind thought.
At the time, I don't even know if they had a word for it back then, but it would not surprise me if he had been back then ADD or
Mhm.
ADHD. His mind never stayed on one thing. It
Mhm.
didn't. It was so fast and so rapid fire. I think one of the things you mentioned, Mork and Mindy, one of my favorite aspects of that show, because that show was funny, but it did get repetitive because this is a very quirky character and you're kind of hammering that. But I don't know if you remember that another guest star, another comedian, ended up on that show from time to time, and it was Robin Williams' hero, Jonathan Winters.
Wow, I didn't
And
know
if
that.
you ever get a chance to go back and listen to a clip of Jonathan Winters on the Tonight Show, for example, with Johnny Carson, and just listen to him, and you can hear Robin Williams in his voice. I mean, in his mannerisms, and they got to be together, and it I've heard Robin Williams talk about him in the past. It was almost like he was speaking of a father figure. It was his hero and then mentor and such. But if you ever
Yeah.
get a chance to listen to him, you'll see a lot of Robin Williams where it came from. And by the way,
Nice.
he's just hilarious,
Yeah.
just hilarious. But that is one of the things you saw the clips and the snippets. I don't know exactly when he was big in stand up before your time. Being a little older, I uh, I am aware of his stand up when that was what he did primarily, and it resonated with me as much for because of who he wasn't
Mm.
as who he was. I found him funny, but I also found him and I guess my parents found him as someone that I could listen to, because his contemporaries, Red Fox and Richard Pryor, and even Eddie Murphy a little bit later. I guess earlier was Bill Cosby. Well, before Bill Cosby became Bill Cosby,
Yeah.
but he didn't work blue. He wasn't Nate Bargatze
Right.
and every family friendly thing. He wasn't necessarily family friendly. He was edgy, but he wasn't a shock jock,
Yeah.
or he wasn't shocking you. This was not, and we certainly don't have to give examples, but if I say Red Fox and I say Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor, if you don't know what I mean, it'll take you about 30 seconds on YouTube to figure out the difference between them.
Yeah.
It was easy to immerse yourself in it without having to sneak around,
Yeah.
I guess,
For
for me
sure.
at the time.
For sure. Well, let's go ahead and jump into some of the movies, because I think we've got a long list here. We're not going to talk deeply about all of them. I think this first list, I'm just going to list them off, and let's just kind of toss out. So the first list we have here is Popeye, Moscow on the Hudson, The Fisher King, Jumanji, Jack, and Jacob the Liar. Jumanji is the one that kind of grabbed me as a kid, and of course they've done some remakes or reboots, I guess you'd say. Popeye, obviously, his first movie, and I think at the time I probably could have seen it, but I wasn't necessarily at the age where I was watching movies a whole bunch. But of those movies, like what's some of the standouts for you?
So that's probably a great representation of how eclectic his catalog is.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Popeye, he's playing essentially a character from his stand-up for an entire movie. That's what he's doing. The movie itself might as well be the children's book or whatever.
Mhm.
It's okay. He, as that character, is really, really good.
Yeah.
The movie itself is not terribly deep, right? I mean, it is what it is. Jumanji, I think it was an amazing
Mhm.
portrayal, and the movie itself, the storyline was something that was really fascinating, very unique,
Mhm.
very interesting. The other three aren't they aren't funny necessarily.
Yeah.
It's the other four. Sorry, I forgot we added the Fisher King.
Yeah. All good.
That Moscow on the Hudson has funny moments, but he's playing again kind of a character. He's playing a Russian musician who is trying to defect,
Okay.
and so you get this square peg round hole
Mhm.
type scenario. You get someone who's an outsider, doesn't understand the American culture, but he's in New York, and so everything is completely New Yorked up. It's all a caricature of, or an extreme view of the U.S. Interesting side note to that, as I went back and rewatched it and then read a little bit of the commentary of it, they go intentionally, they go entire sequences in the movie where he is on the streets of New York and they don't see another American. That there's that
Wow.
many immigrants, and they were trying to portray that on one level he doesn't fit in because he's an outsider, and then he's an outsider in a group of outsiders.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
there was a lot of levels to that when I first saw it I didn't get, but
Sure.
hearing it broken down by the people that had a hand in making the movie, saying, yeah, there was some subtext there. And then I honestly think Jack is one of the movies that I really appreciated most. There's a commonality to a lot of the things that he does, and I'm sure we'll touch on it more later. But it's always a character that's just not your typical leading character.
Mhm.
There's nothing straightforward about a role that he takes. If it's the divorced dad in Mrs. Doubtfire, which we'll talk about later, there's an aspect to it that's
Mhm.
different. If it's a father who's experienced a tragedy in his family, and that hits a couple of movies we'll talk about, there's always just something a little bit different about the way
Mhm.
he does it. Well, Jack, for those that haven't seen it, he plays a child that ages 4 years to one. So he ages 4 times faster. So he's 10 and looks 40.
Yeah, and no, I actually have seen that one too.
Okay.
Of these first ones, and I do remember that one being just. It's meant to be played on from a comedic level, but it ends and you're just like in
Yes.
tears. Like it's
Yes.
it's not a happy ending, you
Exactly.
know. So
So many of his movies,
yeah.
we think of him as a comedian. And I remember, and I don't remember what the first movie I saw was that where he was not just a comedian,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember thinking that he was my favorite comedian. And then he did something like it may have been Dead Poet Society or something to that effect at the time. And I remember thinking he may be my favorite serious actor
Yeah.
too, simply because he is was that believable. Everything, the depth of emotion, I think you have to see the world in a way to be effective as a comedian because you have
Mm-hmm.
to reach so many different people and he's bouncing around between characters and the depth that you have to feel something. If you can channel that into other characters, which doesn't surprise me that he could, it really made him whatever the right word, believable, sincere. I don't know what
Yeah. Authentic.
credible,
Credible.
authentic.
Yeah. Uh, Fisher King. I've never seen that. Kind of what's the premise of that one?
So Fisher King is a movie where he's playing. He's not even the main character in the movie necessarily. He's not the protagonist. The protagonist is a radio host who is very outspoken and somewhat of a, I don't know if it was necessarily political, but very much a in your face. I'm going to say shock jock, but I don't know if that's the right word either. But very outspoken, very inflammatory,
Mm-hmm.
and his words in that movie lead to a listener, a call-in listener, and he mouths off or chastises the call-in listener, belittles him. The call-in person goes and commits a mass shooting in a diner.
Wow.
The Fisher King, played by Robin Williams, that character was in the diner and saw his wife killed by the shooter,
Mm.
and had some mental challenges before, but then just essentially goes off the deep end, disconnects from society, loses
Yeah.
his home. 3 years later, the story is around the radio DJ crossing paths with this person, completely unrelated, not knowing anything about him,
Mm.
meeting him, getting to know him, and finding out that connection. So, in that regard, Robin Williams is playing a homeless, mentally or psychologically, I'm sorry, psychologically challenged person,
Mm-hmm.
and he's, I mean, he's able to just
Wow.
break your heart.
Yeah.
But there's funny moments because he's able to take the quirks of that character and bring them into something you can talk about, bring them into something that seems that's you know what that's actually not so that's more normal than we think, but
Yeah.
kind of poke fun at himself and the character a little bit. But the overall premise of the movie
Mm.
is not funny.
Right. That's crazy. And then you wanted to add Jacob the Liar to this one. Not necessarily one you'd seen, you said, but
I had not. I thought I had, and then I reread the summary, and it's one I'm going to watch.
yeah.
And I'll watch it with Becky, my wife, for those who are just meeting me. She especially has a fascination with World War II and European history, and so we a few years back we visited Germany. We visited Auschwitz. We saw a lot of what was there. She is all into that historical that period, that time period, Diary of Anne Frank, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob the Liar is about Poland during World War II, and the in the ghetto there. in, I don't remember the city, maybe in Warsaw, but it's in Poland. And the hopelessness that is
Mm-hmm.
felt there at that time. And he happens to be somewhere and overhears a shortwave radio transmission by the Germans who were talking about Russian military movement.
Mm.
And so Russians were at fighting on the same side then as Poland. He mentioned this to people. He told people about what he had heard, and they said, "How did you hear this?" There's no way. They didn't believe him because he was trying to tell them there's help on the way. This is, there's good things happening. Keep up, keep the faith, keep hope. And they didn't believe him. And how could you possibly know that? And so he made up a story that he had a secret radio that he could hear these things. And so he told them that. They believed it. Everybody got excited. And then they wanted to know what else he had heard. Well, he didn't have a radio and he didn't have a way to go hear other things. So he started making up the news, inventing the news to keep their spirits up. And in that process, or in that, through that sequence of events, um, the the suicide rate was astronomical at the beginning because people had given up. It dropped to nothing. Anyway, it's a really interesting premise. Um, but another one that has heart. He's playing things that he's going to get laughs
Right.
because
Yeah.
this happened. It's a little different take, but there's some similarities in Good Morning Vietnam in that character. The way he delivers the character is nowhere near the same, but it's very interesting.
So when you say that, kind of giving that like premise of the film, it makes me think of the another World War II film, Life is Beautiful. Have you seen that one?
I don't believe I have.
So it won Best Picture that year, but it's him and his son in the concentration camp, and he convinces his son it's a game, and the whole movie he's trying to keep him from seeing the evil, and he's saying everything's a game, and he's teaching his son the game. And so it's this kind of the same idea
Oh,
where Jacob's lying
wow.
about the whole thing, and this dad is trying to protect his son from the horrors of the World War II, and so the kid's just
Life
enjoying
is Beautiful?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna
So
watch that. Becky will love it. I
yeah,
will too, but that'll be
yeah,
so up
it's
her alley.
so great. It's so great. Kristen hasn't seen it either, and so what's just really fascinating. I don't know where they're stepsisters, but they both have the love for World War II. So I don't know where.
So here is a mini movie marathon idea
Yes,
with Jacob the Liar and Life is
yeah, just two
Beautiful.
movies, not
That's
three.
only 2.
Yep,
We
yep.
don't need to throw Schindler's List on the end of that or
Right,
something. It's
right.
gonna be enough.
Yeah,
It'll be enough with
yeah,
2, and then maybe the new Garfield movie or something that's,
yeah.
a
Exactly,
little lighter hearted.
exactly. So the next group that we have here is like four movies that are kind of a little bit higher in the echelon. I guess I just kind of group them together because I feel like they have a little bit more going on, at least for me. The Birdcage, Mrs. Doubtfire, Hook, and The World's Greatest Dad. Those four movies talk about completely different characters. We're dealing with four completely different
Mhm.
things, but they each are dealing with some things that I think are powerful. So I'll go first on World's Greatest
Please.
Dad. I just watched it today, and it's the story of a dad and a son. And I don't want to tell the whole thing. I don't want to even the main thing because it's powerful and it's touching. But he's a dad, and he has to make a decision about how he's going to progress in life. Um, he's kind of the guy that he feels like he's less than everybody else. Nobody cares about him. He's a teacher. Think like the what was the movie with Paul Giamatti last year? The
The
Leftovers,
Leftovers.
right? Think the Leftovers. He's a teacher. Nobody cares about. He teaches high school. Nobody cares about him. And then this event happens, and all of a sudden, people care about him. But the problem is, it's a lie. And so he just kind of leans into the lie all that stuff, and then it kind of it escalates and escalates, and he has all the things he wanted, he thought, but then there's a sense where he realizes this is I'm just living a lie. I can't do this anymore. And there's a quote at the very end. I'm not giving anything away, but it basically kind of sums up the movie. He's like, "Used to think I was alone, but what I realized is that I don't want to be surrounded by people that make me feel alone. That's the problem."
Wow.
And it's now the fun thing is it's I think written and directed by Bobcat. Yes.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and he has a little cameo in it. I was like, "That's Bobcat," but he's not doing the big extreme voice, but I could tell a little bit in his voice and his look. But he has a little cameo in it. But that popped up at the very end. It's a little bit more smaller of a movie, but the reason we threw it on the list, even though neither of us had seen it at the time we made the list, was because it's kind of his highest rated.
Yeah, it's his highest rated IMDb or actually
Yeah.
everything, every rating system, that's his highest rated. Not overwhelmingly so. Some of that may be because it is more of a niche
Mm-hmm.
film and fewer people saw it, and all those that did knew what they were getting into
Yeah.
and actually wanted to see it, and so maybe it's loaded. I still didn't get a chance to see it, but I'm very interested in it. I suggested it at the beginning because I really thought the premise was incredible. It sounded like it was I could see him doing it. I could get it. The way you described it, breaking off Robin Williams for just a second, it reminds me of the storyline of the musical Dear Evan Hansen,
Oh yeah. Yeah. That
perhaps.
came to me exactly the same. I was
So,
sitting there
which
thinking
is
as I was watching
I
it.
mean, that's incredible to me.
Yeah.
But so
Yep.
I'm in.
Yeah. It's good.
I will definitely be watching that.
So Birdcage. You want to take Birdcage?
Well, you can both take Birdcage. If I did you realize what it was from or what it was beforehand?
No.
Okay, so I did know that when I watched it. I knew it was from the play La Cage aux Folles. I may have mispronounced that, but it's
You're
close
good. Yeah.
enough. The French play. I loved the film. Again, it's a film. He's playing someone who, in this particular case, is extremely comfortable in his own skin,
Mm-hmm.
but his son is not comfortable with him in his skin. For those that have not seen it, or for a reminder for those that have, he plays part of a homosexual couple, and Nathan Lane plays his husband, and they are extremely happy. They are playing to a stereotype, which
Mm-hmm.
this is a character of Robin Williams,
Yeah.
really, in his stand up. And he and Nathan Lane playing off each other is just hilarious. And of course, Nathan Lane is being Nathan Lane, who
Mm-hmm.
is funny in his most serious moments. You're just waiting for him to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
But the premise is that son has a girlfriend and wants to bring him home, and so wants one father to be father and the other to be a friend, or
Yeah. Got it.
not
Yeah.
not the couple. Basically
Mm-hmm.
wanted them to not be who they were because he was afraid it would scare
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend away.
Yeah.
And so he's playing again this square peg in a round hole, but the character is not the square peg in the round hole. The character is being asked to play a character who
Yeah.
is a square peg in a round hole. It's just another level of depth. I really enjoyed the movie. Of course, I enjoyed every movie that he's been in, so it's kind of redundant. But
Yeah, I really like this movie too. Thought it was great. I think it came out in 1996, and so we were still kind of squeamish around homosexuality. I mean, there's still a lot of people that are, but as a society, we were squeamish. At this point, society has pretty much embraced it, but in 1996, there's still this kind of tabooness of it, and there's still this kind of closetedness of people that are that. So seeing a movie about this where they're a happy gay married couple was something that was somewhat revolutionary, I would say, at that time.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And the couple themselves actually somewhat embody that, because one of
Mm-hmm.
them, you have Robin Williams, who I don't know a better way to say it, but he did not embrace the stereotype
Mm-hmm.
of being gay. He was a man who was gay with a few quirks and idiosyncrasies, but Nathan Lane played the
Mm-hmm.
stereotype.
Yeah. So just real quick, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, no, you're
But
not interrupting.
there's a clip that, and I'm going to share it on Instagram so this week. So make sure you're following us, all that stuff. But there's a clip that popped up, and it was Nathan Lane talking about how he and Robin were going on Oprah,
Mhm.
and he wasn't out yet as a gay man.
Okay.
He was still closeted, and wasn't ready to put that out there yet, even though he knew who he was. And so he told Robin, "I'm scared she's going to ask me. I'm scared that I'm going to be outed on this show." And so he said, "I got you." So Oprah asks him somewhat of a straightforward, like, question that was, knowing if he was like, if she knew he was gay, she may not have asked it that way, kind of a thing. But it was like very forward, very much like putting him on the
You're
spot
a
to
natural.
say, "Yeah, you're so great at this." And so then Robin just blows up in all his Robin Williams and just does the entire stereotype and just deflects that entire question, takes the heat off of Nathan. He doesn't even have to say anything. And it's an interview with Nathan talking about this moment and how comforting it was to have someone in his corner as he was kind of in that
Was it
moment.
shortly after that he did come out?
I believe so. Yeah.
Because he's been out a
Yeah,
very
for
long
sure.
time.
Do you know where I saw him? Of course, you don't know where I saw him first. I think, do you know what his most national breakout moment was? Nathan
Hey,
Lane?
other than The
No.
Lion King? I guess I don't.
The sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, stuffy head fever, so you can rest
Oh
medicine.
my goodness, you're right.
He
You're
was the
right.
NyQuil. He was
He
the
was
NyQuil,
NyQuil.
like, face of NyQuil for a commercial for a
Oh,
stint, because he
that's
had. I mean,
right.
no offense, like, not something disparaging at all. He does have a large nose, and
Yes,
so they just put some red makeup on it, and he just can. I mean, so that's where I remember.
and he has it's a very
Yep,
average
yep,
guy
yep,
look.
yeah,
Nice,
yeah.
nice.
Very cool.
See, all you need in poker parlance, you need a chip and a chair. You just need a chance.
Yeah,
Just a
just a
chance.
chance, and you'll get there. You'll get there. So Hook for me, I know it wasn't probably high on your list. It hit me at a right time. I will say I was probably a little older than its target audience, but my cousin, one time I remember visiting my cousin, and literally it was on repeat. Literally on repeat. Like the entire visit, like the whole weekend visit, it's Hook, and then it's Hook, and it's Hook, and it's Hook, and it's Hook. And it's, for me, the standout, like, for that movie. I mean, as a kid, I really loved Rufio. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
so cool and all that stuff. I thought Dustin Hoffman did fine with it. Was, he did a fine job of portraying a different version of Hook than we'd seen before.
Mhm.
Bob Hoskins in it. That's fun dynamics. The pivotal moment for me, the Robin Williams moment for me, and the one that, like, got me in my heart even as a young kid, was the kid coming up to him and squeezing his face and going, "There you are, Peter." And it's just like,
Yeah.
imagine. And so, those who haven't seen it, it's the story of Peter Pan who's grown up in the real world, and he's forgotten everything as a kid, like you do as an adult. You have your imaginary world and you build all this stuff. It makes me think a little bit about the Christopher Robin movie with Ewan
Yes.
McGregor, right? He grows
Or
up.
If most recently, right?
Yes, where you kind of grow up and you
Yeah.
forget about the mystery. You forget about the fantasy world that you used to live in, and all this stuff. And so it's that, and then it's him finding himself. So similar to what you said, for most of the movie, at least half the movie, he's the square peg round hole, but then he finds his roundness. His
Mhm.
edges start to soften, and he
That's a
finds his,
great way to put
and
that. I
he
like that.
he becomes the circle. All of that, and all the memories, all the
Magic.
emotion, all the magic is back. I mean, it's just really touching, really touching movie. And like I
I
said,
agree.
it kind of hit me around the right time as a kid to really find that fascinating. So
That I agree. I agree completely. That role is one of his most endearing to me
mhm.
because and I don't remember what year did that come out?
1991.
Oh, okay. I retract every thought that I was where I was going. All of the deep thoughts I was about to lay out there, never
Yeah.
mind. I was definitely too young to feel that way, but it still resonates with me now
Mhm.
as a parent, and my kids are full grown, but as a dad watching them grow up, all of those magic moments
Mhm.
that you feel, "Oh, I remember what it was like to be that," and you get to see somebody else experience that.
Mhm.
That's how I felt that
Yeah.
movie. That's what it made me feel.
Yeah. And I think that it definitely makes sense. I mean, it's all good, man. We can cry here. It's fine. It's a safe place. I think there's definitely a gap for me too in that time frame where there are some really good movies for kids that I just passed over or glossed over or didn't prioritize because I was in college or I was like, I'm an adult now. I'm going to stay away from those kid things. But then kind of remember like going back and seeing, man, there's a gap. There's some really good, like Iron Giant is one I never saw. And so we're gonna watch it with the kids sometime
Mhm,
soon because I know it's a great movie. And Hercules,
mhm,
I know it's a great Disney movie. I was out of the Disney cartoon phase, so I didn't watch that one. I mean, I've seen it, but didn't really resonate. So there's a sense where we have those gaps, but there's so many of these movies where they're again, we haven't said it on the podcast too much, but you know, watching these movies with the boys, a lot of them are built for kids but they're really talking to adults, you
yes.
know? So, and I think Hook fits that somewhat. It's hitting that middle-aged dad who's
Mhm,
remembering that's what it was like to be fun again, you
exactly.
know?
The movie you compared it to, Christopher Robin,
Mhm.
was probably one of the most powerful, poignant movies as an adult and a dad that I remember ever seeing.
Yeah.
It hit me out of nowhere. I watched it on a whim, I think on a business trip in a hotel room. It was, "All right, fine." Becky didn't really wanna see it, so I watched it,
Yeah.
and alone in a hotel room's a safe space to cry too, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Last one in this group, Mrs. Doubtfire. Probably this is probably the one of his movies that I've watched the most
Mhm.
because it hit me at the right time, 1993. It was appropriate for my mom to allow me to watch it. It had maybe a sh word or something in it a couple times, but it wasn't too drastic. And so, but it was one that my mom thought was hilarious, and it's the whole. I mean, it's so funny, but you put yourself in reality and you have a person that you're divorced pretending to be someone who's going to take care of your kids and lying to your face every single day and basically lying themselves into your home. That's a pretty
It is, but it's definitely 2 sides of a coin because it's also the dad that will do anything,
yeah,
make an absolute fool of himself
yeah,
to remain part of his kids'
absolutely.
lives, which obviously that's how the movie ends up
Yeah,
getting it. Both of those get
yeah,
woven back in, but it is interesting that I always resonated more with the second half or the second layer of that than the first. There's probably a couch session with a therapist as to why, and I have my ideas, but that's what resonated was the dad that would do anything to be there versus the spouse that was or the ex that was manipulating a
right.
situation.
Sure.
But it is interesting the 2
Yeah.
lenses you can see that through.
It's a great premise. It's a gimmick, right?
Right.
It's a concept that hey, let's there's something here. And if we have Robin Williams doing it, it's going to be great, and it's going to be endearing, and nobody's going to think that about it.
And it's a character of
Yeah,
his.
yeah,
If you've heard his stand-up, not by name, but
sure.
that voice and those mannerisms,
Mhm.
that is a well-cultivated character that he has that they then essentially I'm not saying they wrote the movie or the screenplay around him,
Right.
but they wrote something that essentially was a story around that character. They may not have written it around Robin Williams' character,
Yeah.
but it just so happens that he
He
had
has
one
he had one on the back
and it
burner.
was it's one of his main ones.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think for me, I think the one that resonate like there's probably quotes in here in all of these movies that jump out, but I think one that jump is when he pegs Pierce Brosnan with a grapefruit. He goes, "It was a rum by fruiting." That's the one that jumps out at me whenever I think Mrs. Doubtfire. That hello,
Yes,
that with
with the pie face.
the pie face, and then the rum by fruiting. I've said that multiple times in real life, so pretty awesome.
One of his more comfortable movies because I think partly because it's even hard to recognize him as who he is, as him. And so
Mhm.
there's something, I don't know, maybe it's also psychological, another couch session, but the the grandmotherly
Mhm.
lady, disarming, nice, the every kid wants to be around
Yeah,
her. So,
yeah.
but yeah, it's just wonderful.
The one other thing I would say about the premise is it does, you saying that what you said about the father that'll do anything, um, just kind of touching on a real moment for me was the first week I moved out of my house when I was getting my divorce, and we established the traditional standard every other weekend and one night a week
Mhm,
schedule for me to see the kids. The first Thursday, the first week I'm out, I go to the house and I hang out with the boys. We make dinner. I think it's in October, so we made jack o' lanterns, and then it was bath and bed, and that's it. That's
mm,
that's all.
mm,
That's all I get with them.
yeah,
And this thing that up until that point I may have seen as a this parenting thing and these kids being a nuisance or
mm,
something that was in the way of me living my life and all these things that I did selfishly and all these thoughts that I had that led me to make poor decisions. That first week I realized, oh, that's not enough.
mm,
And that I had the conversation with their mom and we established, okay, it's going to be different. And then when my counselor, when we eventually got divorced, my counselor said, if nothing else, the attempt of you trying to reconcile and her seeing you as a father where she hadn't seen you fathering up until that point, you getting your kids back as much as you can, like that might have been all that was for. It
mm,
never would have worked out as a marriage after that, but you got your kids and I get them half the time and even more because she drops them off here in the morning for school. She picks them up from here after school. And so I see my kids every day. And that's such a blessing. So I kind of relate to that
I
that very
yeah,
really.
I'm sure. No, that's awesome. That's amazing. I can see where some people would resonate with or they would identify more with the other half, but I think
Yeah.
as a dad, or I mean, everyone has had one.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are just pieces of all of these characters and their situations that I just go back to saying that he always chose roles that resonated somehow
Yeah.
with the audience. There was a complexity to them, or even if it wasn't as complex, it hits you square in the feels.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm probably too old to say it that way. So right in the
Oh no,
heart.
you're good. You're good. Awesome. So I do want to touch on two movies real quick. I put them in our schedule here. A Dark Turn in 2002. Up until this point, most of the movies we're seeing are dramatic roles, yes, and comedic roles and some comedy. Nothing real heinous is going on with his characters. Like nothing really drastically evil or anything like that. But two movies in 2002 came out, and they were both him as the antagonist. Well, two as the villain. One, he's the protagonist, but he's the villain. The other one, he's the serial killer.
Mhm.
Um, and it was just interesting, especially when I saw that it was the same. They came out the same year, whether they were shot
Right.
whenever. But But seeing him in a role, those two movies are Insomnia, which is a Christopher Nolan film. Al Pacino plays the main character in Alaska, serving a case for the FBI. He's kind of up there because everybody wants him out, and so they send him to Alaska to do this case. Ends up trying to track down a serial killer with Hilary Swank, the local cop. Ends up finding spoiler alert, it's Robin Williams. And so that was and he's the one that's put together in that movie. Like Al Pacino is suffering from all the insomnia because the sun's always out and he can't sleep, and so he's feeling like he's hallucinating at times and things like that. So Robin Williams' character is just taking advantage of all that, and so really solid thriller. It's Christopher Nolan's like second movie out the gate, I believe. Let me just look that up real quick because I think release order. Yeah, so this is Christopher Nolan's second mainstream film. First being Memento, wide release studio. Second out the gate, Insomnia, which is interesting because it's really down to earth. There's no time issues like Memento's got the time thing. He does time changes in a lot.
Fairly straightforward. This is
It's a story. Yeah,
maybe it's a story, but it's got two giant names in it, and that's the hook here.
Yeah,
the allure is this is just a star vehicle too.
Yeah. And man, really, really solid movie.
Name. Sorry, I should give Hilary Swank her.
Sure.
Her
Yeah, sure. And I think it just allowed him to kind of solid himself as a director, as a solid director. We can trust this guy.
We don't have to have no gimmicks.
Yeah, yeah. And then from there, he got Batman Begins, right? So I mean, you can
work for him. Okay.
Yeah. And then the other one that came out that same year we watched and you had never seen before.
I had not.
It's called 1 Hour Photo. He plays a clerk at the manager of the photo shop at some Walmart-ish type store, and he has a fascination with this one family, and it's a deranged fascination, and he fantasizes about being part of their family. Ends up like breaking into their house, drinking their soda, sitting on their couch and stuff, and really, really kind of a freaky character. You had just seen this for the first time for the marathon. What's your thoughts?
So I did not get a chance to see Insomnia, but I did read a synopsis about it because I just time got away from me. But I believe that the fact that they're both dark and creepy is where and the star Robin Williams is where the similarities in these end.
Yes.
Because I believe that 1 Hour Photo is actually very similar to many other characters that he has played. It's a darker character, but by the end of 1 Hour Photo, it's a sympathetic character. The whole movie, it's not.
Yeah.
But there's a redemption backstory that doesn't excuse by any means what happens during the movie. But at the end of the movie, you don't feel necessarily animosity for the antagonist or for his character. You don't, not the same way. Insomnia, again, I haven't seen it, but from what I could gather, there's not the same
right.
Here's how he got this way kind of a twist.
Right.
The same at the end. 1 Hour Photo was really, really good.
Awesome.
Again, because I think I'm trying to picture someone else playing that role. And he doesn't look terribly like himself. He's very much made to look like the person you don't notice, which is character. I mean, it's kind of one of the characteristics of his character. But he's, Robin Williams in every role he plays, there's a piece of him that is just larger than life. It's vibrant, even if he's trying to subdue it. But there's a twinkle in his eye. There's a look. There's a something that there's more there, and you can tell he's dialing it back. But there's probably 100 one-liners being ad-libbed in his head at any moment. You just see it in his eyes. In this role, it's he's not turned up to 11. He's turned down to 2, his personality.
Yeah.
And but he's so believable still as that person to me. I don't know. I think there are certain actors and actresses that just resonate with us, and he does with me.
Yeah, for sure. I remember seeing the trailer for it. I just I don't remember. I mean, it grabbed me, I think, because it looked like a creepy movie and it's
Mhm.
Robin Williams. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
I don't remember when I first saw it, but it stuck with me because it felt so foreign for him as an actor to play that. And so, when we were talking to Robin Williams, I was like, well, we should do a
Yes.
marathon, and this is the one. If we only get to watch three, then this is definitely one. And then kind of jumping on to the next group, I would say like our top Robin Williams flicks. The other one of the other ones we watched was Good Morning Vietnam,
Mhm.
and I had never seen it before, so I wanted to introduce you to 1 Hour Photo, and you had two that you wanted to introduce to me: Good Morning Vietnam and What Dreams May Come. So let's jump into Good Morning Vietnam. I grew up in the '80s, and um, Vietnam was still very present, even though we were kind of out of it. It was still this present thing in movies, films, TV. It's like this thing that I knew about, even though I didn't go through it. It felt very close to
That
home.
was the Apocalypse Now, and
Yeah. Well,
later
even
on, Goodwill Hunt. Not Goodwill Hunt. What am I? Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket,
Three
Thin Red.
words.
Yeah.
that's what they had in common. Was 3-word titles. Uh,
Thin Red Line, 3 word
and
title.
yeah,
Yeah.
Platoon.
And then the other one, all the Chuck Norris ones, Missing in Action, right? Like
Okay, I guess
Rambo.
those. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they all had a presence on Saturday morning TV, like on the cable channels that it kind of I knew this was a big deal.
I'm sorry. You say Saturday morning TV, and to me, that's cartoons.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
times changed.
um, so I was excited. I knew like definitely on the list of wanting to watch it. I just never set aside the time to
Mhm,
do it. And this was the perfect time to watch it. I know you love this film. I love this film. And Kristen didn't get to participate in the marathon, but she was like, I really want to watch that film. So I watched it again that same week
mhm.
with her, or the next weekend probably. And I just thought the story is great. His acting is superb. It is very. I believe it came out in the '80s, right? It's or is it late '70s?
No, no,
No,
no. Late.
87. 87. So it's '80s. Uh, has a lot of that charm of like even the sound, the audio sound, and the way that characters interact. Very much that kind of some comedic elements to that, just their interactions, not because they're telling jokes or it's a funny scene written. It's just the way that they're interacting is funny,
Mhm.
and the way that the other actors are enjoying his comedy. But I think that actually has more to do with his freedoms.
I don't want to overstate it because I don't remember the exact numbers, but this was very much like another one we'll talk about in a minute. There are a couple of movies that he's known for that the entire movie essentially was ad-libbed.
Yeah.
That he had a script, and for every scene he had a script, and the very first take was that script, and they would keep doing takes until he said he was done. And that with Good Morning Vietnam, I believe that it was no more than a handful of lines from the script
Hmm.
actually made it into the movie. It
Yeah.
was all him. And so all of the interactions that you see is probably authentic because this is a stand-up routine that they're hearing. They're hearing him just be him. I loved the movie, but I loved it even more when I realized that that's
Yeah.
that's him.
Yeah.
That's that guy. Of course, that movie is two movies.
Hmm.
There's a distinct turning point in the movie when
Yeah.
it ceases to be a comedy.
Right.
The comedy is some of the funniest you'll ever see him, you'll ever hear him. And then you get the serious side of the movie that it's serious because of the character, but it's serious because of
The
the
context.
context that is that's surrounding the characters. And so
Yeah.
it One of his best.
Yeah.
If you're ranking a top 5, I don't
Oh,
know how you could not put that in there.
yeah, it's got to be top 5, if not top 3. Just in the pivotal scene. I mean, you and I are both in tears on the
Mhm.
couch watching the scene where he's ready to give up. And I can relate to this character so much because I find myself in positions where not my day job. I feel very validated in my day job, but there are times in my side projects where I'm trying to help someone out, or I'm trying to provide insight, or I'm trying to give of my time and energy to something to help someone else succeed, or help something happen for someone else. And I feel like all of my efforts are just not appreciated. And I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other people that feel that way, but that was something I resonated with in this film
Mm.
now more than when we watched it. But it's more just like he is doing what he's doing, and you love the general who's like, yeah, this is why we want this guy. He needs to be making us laugh. He needs to be making us
There's
smile.
plenty of stuff here
Yeah,
that is stuff that is the
yeah.
opposite. We need something.
We need something, and so that was awesome to have that backing. And then of course the things happen, and he's got to leave and step away or whatever. But everybody gets their due. All those people that treated him poorly, they get
Yeah.
their due as well. So that's kind of a feel good. And I love the bit with him and Forrest Whitaker. Forrest Whitaker is just great in
Mhm.
this. Such a young actor, but he did such a job in this role. And the funny bit with the car engine, right? They
Mhm.
did it 3 times, which is just perfect, like a
Yep.
script moment, a movie moment. You get that sometimes, I'm sure, in novels too. But this moment where he like does something in the first scene, and then oh yeah, yeah, and then he does something in the middle of the movie, and it's a callback, and then the very last scene you see him, and they do it again, and it's just yeah, that's great. That's
Yep.
a funny gag. So yeah, Good Morning Vietnam. If you have not seen it, you need to take the time to see it, even if you don't understand the Vietnam War and can't relate to that. You can relate to this
Right.
story very, very
Yeah.
well.
Absolutely, you can.
One of the next movies that came out that I think probably, I know Good Morning Vietnam put him on the radar uh, for his acting, but this is also one that kind of is a standard quotable moment, um, that people reference in real life a lot. Oh, Captain, my Captain, Dead Poet Society.
Yep.
He plays a college professor teaching them literature, and he's trying to expand their horizons, but he's doing it in a way that's non-conventional. Really cool story. It's the kind of the when you're a kid or you're a high schooler and you like want to go to college, that's the professor you want. The
Mhm.
one that's just inspiring you to think beyond yourself. But just beautiful movie. I would say that Captain, my Captain, another situation where he's not being appreciated for his abilities,
Correct.
and the students
Mm.
come to
Well,
his aid.
it's another one of the characters, which I alluded to this earlier, and I said we'd probably get back to it. But there's a theme with most of his characters, and I don't mean a theme like a typecast, but if you look below the surface, his characters are is quintessentially human. There is something about them. There's a depth that resonates, but it's generally someone who is either actively bucking the system, say a Mrs. Doubtfire type of a scenario, or they have a trait inherent to them that sets them apart from mainstream, say Jack, or anyway,
Fisher
that
King.
Fisher Kings. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Or it is someone who's just a little bit different. Not not in a bad way, good way, not in a way that gets judged by anything other than I don't understand you. And yes, and in Goodwill Hunting, which we'll talk about in a minute, he's this way, and I think one Dead Poet Society and Goodwill Hunting have two things in common, or have something in common, that he's not the main character in either
Mhm,
one. The
mhm.
movie is not about him, but his role is pivotal
Yeah.
in the movie. Beyond supporting actor role or supporting character, it's the linchpin of the
Mhm.
movie, but he's not the main character.
Yeah.
We don't talk about this one on the list. It didn't make our list, but he has an even much smaller role in August Rush,
Mhm.
if anyone has ever seen that. But it's an extremely important, influential,
Yeah.
oracle type character that steers a large portion of the movie. I mean, the "Oh Captain, my Captain," I don't know how many times you've wanted to say that. More than that, how many times I would have given anything for someone to say that to me. I
Yeah.
don't know. That probably was the first movie I saw of his where he was serious. The one where there was nothing about his role that was comedy. There were lines. I mean, there were definitely lines in Dead Poet Society even that made you smile,
Mhm.
but it wasn't a comedy. There was nothing about that
Yeah.
movie that was a comedy, and so that was probably where I first recognized how much more there was to him,
Yeah.
and that's the one that made me want more. I knew the Mork and Mindy and the Happy Days, and I knew the stand-up routines and Popeye, and so Robin Williams, yeah, he's hilarious.
Wait.
It was probably Dead Poet Society
Yeah.
where I said, he's incredible. Not he's hilarious.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
There was one interview I saw with Ethan Hawke where he was frustrated with Robin's acting and that he was playing in every take. And he's like, and he's like, why can't he just be serious? I was right out of acting school.
Oh,
I was trying to be the best actor. I was trying to do my job and be on. And here he is having fun all the time. And it's like it was a learning experience for him to recognize that no, we're here to have fun too.
if I'm making my top five, I said a minute ago, I have no idea what order they'd be in. So this, but I said you have to put Good Morning Vietnam in there.
Yeah.
But I will say that above that, Dead Poet Society is there for me just because of the depth of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The every character there, they all resonated somehow, and
Yeah.
he was the beacon of light for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that resonates as I have a background in teaching. It resonates as a father. It resonates just as a man, and
Mm-hmm.
it still resonates of recognizing the people in my life growing up when I was the boy in that or one of the students, those people that had that kind of influence in my life.
Yeah.
So it's just so many depths or so
Mm-hmm.
many levels.
So good. So the next movie we have on our list to discuss is one where again he's not the main character. He is a side character. The main character is Robert De Niro, I believe,
Mhm.
and that is Awakenings, 1990 film.
Yeah. The premise is
Yeah.
that each of the patients in this ward suffered from encephalitis when they were younger, in their teens or 20s, and they have been essentially catatonic
Mm-hmm.
or even locked in, if you not quite, but mentally they've just been
Mm-hmm.
they exist. That's it. And what they found is that what the premise of the movie is that the symptoms they were uh, displaying were very similar to advanced Parkinson's. And so Robin Williams' character, who is a research doctor, not a patient care physician, because he's horrible with people, gets a job at this hospital as a research doctor and talks. He has to convince a family to let him administer a Parkinson's drug treatment to their person. That patient is Robert De Niro. And so he applies that to Robert De Niro, and Robert De Niro wakes up. And there's so many levels to this movie beyond even the interaction. And Robin Williams is not the main character in
Mm-hmm.
this. Um, he's obviously an integral character,
Yeah.
and there's so much going on around him in the movie that it's actually a masterclass in acting to contain his character in the
Mhm.
walls or the box that it's in, because his character is not outgoing and not gregarious and not funny and not anything that
Mhm.
is Robin Williams, but you get the banter between someone. I mean, here's Robert De Niro, who's essentially been in a coma for 30 years
Mhm.
and wakes up. Robert De Niro's character was 20 when he became this way, and now he's roughly 50. I don't remember the exact ages,
Sure.
but has to deal with the fact that this person and that person aren't the same person because De Niro's been conscious. He's
Right.
heard the
Yeah.
whole time. And so there's a lot going on. It's one of the more powerful movies, both from the highs of the hope, and the ending is
Yeah.
equally the other. But I don't know that it's the most fantastic Robin Williams vehicle, but if he is just an integral part of an amazing film, that's how I felt about this. That it's the overall film, and if you were to ask anyone who's in Awakenings, the first name you pick is Robin Williams, then De Niro. But
Yeah.
even though De Niro was nominated for Best Actor
Mhm.
for this Academy Award. He did not win, but he and Robin Williams shared another award for Best Actor that year, and I don't remember the organization, but
Yeah.
just
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen it once, but it's definitely one that I want to watch again. And as my mind thinks through it, like the kind of pairing with like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest
mhm.
with Awakenings, even though they're different types of mental,
Yes.
disability, but there's something that's like powerful. And then to see these actors in their you know, like Jack Nicholson and
Mhm.
Robert De Niro and
Yes.
Robin De Niro, Robin Williams and stuff. So yeah, definitely want to rewatch it. And I'm sure Kristen would love it too. It's just one of those. It's just a solid. I remember seeing it, just saying, "This is just a great story, great acting, great movie.
Yeah,
It's
but
amazing."
yeah, it's one of those you pay attention to.
Yeah,
Don't don't be on your phone while
right.
it's there, but have the box of tissue nearby for happy reasons and sad reasons.
Yeah,
It's just if you want to feel something,
yeah,
most Robin Williams movies will make you feel something.
yeah,
There's an emotional component. And this one hits a few.
yeah, for sure. And the next one hits joy to the 10,000th degree. This one is Aladdin. The genie is not the main character. It's called Aladdin, but the genie steals the
A
show.
is not the
The
titular character,
genie.
but yeah, he's the main character.
You said it before. We were talking about Good Morning Vietnam. That it was a vehicle where Robin Williams was just able to go off the cuff and improv the entire movie. I remember even as a kid that there were news reports on national news, ABC Tonight or whatever, that was talking about this movie that uh, Robin Williams made Disney change their workflow because they had Robin Williams playing the genie. They had to change the way that they made movies. And when you think about something that's been in the works, Disney's been pumping out movies for decades upon decades at that point,
Yeah.
right? So the fact that that powerhouse, that they had a system in place that worked for them for decades, that they're going to go, maybe we should change that for this actor.
Yeah, what could it hurt? Let's give it a shot. Can you imagine getting paid to be the director? And what did the director do? All right, go.
Yeah.
Let me know when you're done. You you make sure you don't run out of film or disk space or whatever it
Yeah.
is. You just
Yeah.
keep rolling.
Yeah. And so he did all of his lines in the studio. They recorded the audio of the film before they did the drawings.
Mm-hmm.
Every film, from my remembrance of this news report when I was 12 years old, this was the first time that they'd done that.
I believe you are correct. I believe I've heard the same thing.
They would draw they would draw the mouths and do all the lines, and then the voice actors would come in and they would match their talking to the mouth
Because it was a
movements.
script.
Yeah, because they did it already with live action films. when they'd come in after the fact. So, oh, we didn't get that line. You got to come back in. You got to re-say that line so we can get it clear on the audio. You might notice that in films, even to this day, where the audio is just a little bit cleaner than every other audio in that scene. It's because they had to ADR, I think is what it's
Right.
called.
Okay.
They had to come back in and oh, we got to redo that line. It's muffled or you slurred it or it's just needs to be cleaner. And so they'll just redo lines. And sometimes that's actors have to do that for a lot of the movie. So they were used to doing that already with talkies from the
Mhm.
beginning. This is how you did it. Well, Robin Williams, because of his genius, because of the powerhouse that he was at improv, and knowing that if we've got this guy, we got to let him cook.
Yes.
We cannot hold
You
him
don't
back.
write his lines. You
So we've got to change. We're going to change our entire process for this one dude. Like as that just blows my
I wonder how
mind.
long that took. Meaning, I wonder if that was a before he got there. By the way, we're going to bring in Robin Williams. He's agreeing to do this role, so we're going to do this. Or if that was we get there and he goes, guys, come on, no. Gary Marshall, I believe, was one of the creators of Happy Days, and so he would have already known. You bring this guy in, they don't script more. That
Yeah.
that because the whole Nanu Nanu and that's all that was all improv. That was none of that was in the character development or in the script. That
Right.
was all Robin Williams. And so somewhere along the line, I would think, and I don't know the timeline. I don't have his 72 different films or whatever it
Right.
was committed
Yeah.
to timeline memory, which I was surprised there was that many when I looked
I
them up.
know.
To go down the list, it's like, oh yeah, we could do this. How many? We'll do this one and then this one, and I mean, believe it or not, dear listeners, this is a truncated list. It's a long list, but it's been pared down quite a bit. But I wonder when that happened. If that was okay, we're smart enough that we're going to do this, or it took a half a day of all right. Here are my lines. No, no, we're not done. I got something I'd like to try, and how long it took for that to become
Mhm.
just the new MO
Right.
of that. Because when you look at the other Disney films now, even the remakes
Mhm.
of Aladdin,
Right.
whether it's Will Smith or Shaquille O'Neal or whatever, though they're all. I promise they're doing other stuff. Will Smith especially
Yeah.
is. I mean, he definitely ad libbed certain things.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, for me, I mean, Aladdin, Robin Williams, incredible. Never gonna have a friend like me. Never have a friend.
Yeah.
That whole thing. I don't know that he did all the singing or anything, but either way, like just the character itself, um, incredible. For me as a kid, the music really resonated with me as well. Just the music of that movie, A Whole New World, is one that I've sung with Kristen in the car.
Mhm.
It's like this is like one of the most beautiful songs
Right.
in his movie ever, and just a lot of cool things. And actually, I think it even came up this week. I was in my head, or maybe I can't remember if it was a radio or what. I heard Arabian Nights, like Arabian Days. I was like, why is that song in my, But I think it was some.
If
I
you
heard,
ever figure out why certain things that get pulled from the couch cushions of our mind, let me
yeah,
know because I don't
yeah,
have any idea where certain things pop in.
yeah. It's incredible. It's incredible. Um, The next one, kind of calling to the characters that he plays, and all of them kind of grabbing, all of them having somewhat something similar to them. Patch Adams, I think,
Mhm.
is a culmination of a
Yes,
lot of
I agree.
those characters that he's played. Um, really likable, has quirks, has a different way of doing things, and he wants to see that through. And then the beauty of that, a beauty of the doctor taking the time to be there for those folks and those kids, um, and where that leads is just, I mean, it was like just groundbreaking when it hit. It was people were just talking about this. I mean, when I told some friends that I was doing a Robin Williams marathon, they said, "Well, you got to watch Patch Adams." Like so. It's the one I
Mhm.
think that grabs people the most. That and probably Good Will Hunting, but he's the main character in Patch Adams. He's the lead. Monica Potter, I think this is the first time I saw her, but I'd seen her then around in other films. And then also has Philip Seymour Hoffman
Mhm.
in it as well. So just a beautiful, beautiful movie, beautiful character, and definitely tugs at your heartstrings in all the different ways.
Right. No, I completely agree. I'm trying to remember it. There's something in the back of my mind that Awakenings and Patch Adams both are based on
Yeah,
actual people or actual events. Not that those are the only ones, but that this is a real person that this is modeled after. I'm sure there's plenty of artistic license, especially
sure.
when you consider the humor that's injected, the quirkiness of the character. There's a lot of Robin Williams in that character,
Yeah.
but the premise
Hmm.
behind it, I think, is not an entirely fictitious character.
The next one we have on the list was one another the last one we watched for a marathon. So it was Good Morning Vietnam. It was 1 Hour Photo, and then we closed the day watching What Dreams May Come.
Before you comment on this, I want to say thank you for watching it because it is not a terribly well-known movie. Critically, it's kind of meh,
Yeah,
and it's not him being funny. It's different to
yeah,
me than pretty much any other movie he did. I don't know how much you say about your faith and your
yeah.
so there's part of this that I'm truly interested in talking with you about because that movie to me has a very deep spiritual undertone without being preachy. And
Yeah.
so there's aspects of it that really resonated for a lot of reasons, how I was
Hmm.
raised, but also the challenges that I have in that area. So I'll
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that and then uninterrupt.
Yeah. I knew of the movie before we watched it. I knew the premise. It's something to do with the afterlife. It came out in 1998, depending on the day, the month it came out. I was either my senior year of high school or my first year of college. So I was in that time period of leaving the nest, trying to find myself, and that also included my journey to ministry and faith and spreading my wings there as well. I didn't see it at that time, not for any reason other than just it just didn't get on the list of movies to see that year. But I knew going in, I knew when we watched it, I knew kind of the premise. It was something about the afterlife, and it was just this kind of, and it probably got some negative feedback from Christians at the time because it wasn't heaven. It wasn't their idea of what heaven is,
Mhm.
My views of all that related to the Bible, religion, the afterlife, faith, all that stuff. I view it differently than a lot of Christians do. I believe that there's a lot of imagery, a lot of symbolism, a lot of metaphor
Mhm.
that the scripture is trying to call on. And when we look at it and read it and try to get an exact science or an accurate picture, it was never meant to do that. And so we're really reading what we want into it.
I would contend that the movie is doing exactly the same thing. It is probably more difficult to see something visually, but yet think of it in terms of metaphor
Yeah.
or symbolism. And that's maybe why some might have taken umbrage with
Right.
with aspects of it because well you're portraying it like this, and I don't think that's necessarily the point there either. I honestly don't believe the movie itself was trying to preach any
No,
particular message. It took aspects from multiple
it
places
did.
and
And honestly, I think that the majority of the idea of the movie's afterlife depiction is more classical Greek ideas than
yes,
it is anything
it
trying to
is
be
very much
resemblant.
Dante.
Yeah,
That is Dante's
yeah,
Inferno.
yes,
I mean,
yes, yeah. So early Catholic,
yes.
very early Catholic ideas of the afterlife. But I mean, the story, we talked about it earlier, of the lengths that a dad would go
Mhm.
to make sure that he sees his kids.
Mhm.
This movie is the lengths that a husband would go to ensure that he doesn't have to spend eternity without his wife.
Mhm.
Like, that's the story. That's the heart of the story is, I will do anything. I will give up my soul. I will give up heaven. I will give it all up if I can't have her. And so I'm going to go try and find her, rescue her, save her, whatever I have to do to make sure that we're together
Mhm.
in eternity and not separated. And that was it was a very poetic movie, very beautiful movie. And Robin, just incredible, amazing.
Yeah. I don't know where it ranks
Sure.
in my movies, but if I am simply ranking his performance as an actor top to bottom, I think it may be the best performance he's ever had. It's
Hmm.
if it's not, it's right there. The depth of his character, how his character draws you in.
Yeah.
Um, People can take their issue with details of the story or the imagery or the symbolism as it may not mesh with some preconceived notion that they may have on things. But if you are able to view it through a an objective lens
Yeah.
as a movie with and don't feel it's trying to make you feel or believe one way or the other or anything, and just take it for what it is, it it ranks right up there for me of anything I've seen. It is one of the more emotional movies I've ever seen. There are sob out loud
Yeah.
moments that hit you multiple times through it. I'm not saying that it's sob out loud because it is so incredibly sad, but the twists or the emotional, you are thinking this and it grabs you over here. Those I for those I mean, most people wouldn't know me. I have a tendency to be extremely over analytical. It's how I'm wired, except when I watch a movie.
Hmm.
I love being taken along for the ride. I don't try to figure it out. Spoiler alert, but Sixth Sense, I didn't know he was dead. Okay, I didn't. I loved it. Um, my wife told me about 20 minutes before we found out, hey, you realize he's dead, right? It's like, no, no, he's not. Ah, and it ruined everything. I want to be taken for that ride.
Yeah.
The It's like going to a restaurant and ordering the chef special and them saying, well, how do you want that done? Or what do you want? Whatever the chef says.
Hmm.
This is their deal.
Yeah.
If the director wants me to feel a certain thing at a certain point, that's what I want to feel.
Yeah.
And that movie was more of that than almost any movie I think I can come up with.
Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate you, like, insisting that we watch it. I don't know how early in our relationship you brought it up, but it might have been our first conversation ever.
One of because I mean full disclosure, it's probably not for everybody.
Yeah.
My wife didn't care for it.
Yeah.
I found out later that her telling me no, I didn't care for it was an understatement. She has told others in much more direct language what she thought of that movie. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's likely one
Hmm.
that only the most ardent Robin Williams fans
Yeah.
have seen.
Right.
And if you are not just a fan of his comedy, if you are a fan of him,
Yeah.
watch that movie. Give it a
Absolutely.
shot.
Yep. Absolutely. I second that. Well, the last movie for the podcast today is one that just took everybody by surprise. Two kids wrote a script. Nobody had ever heard of them.
I still haven't heard of them. They didn't amount to anything
Yeah, they
after this
didn't amount
movie.
to anything. This didn't do anything for their careers. Ben Affleck had been in a couple movies, I think, but Matt Damon was nobody. They wrote a script and they got Robin Williams to play a character, and it just blew everybody's minds. Won best screenplay that year. I don't remember if it won best movie, but I know that it won a lot of awards. And that is Good Will Hunting. And again, where Robin Williams is playing this very somewhat small screen time character, but the pivotal character for the main
Yeah,
protagonist.
there's no way that the protagonist could have had the character arc that he had without a mentor or influence guiding him.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about the other ones. The other ones are more blatant. Good Morning Vietnam and Aladdin let Robin Williams do his thing.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out, a lot of Good Will Hunting was also improv.
I did not know that.
I just saw a clip recently where Matt Damon talks about the story that he tells in one of the scenes.
The monologue, the big monologue?
I don't know if that's a big it's just one of the funny stories
Okay.
that he tells. I think I've got the clip on
Actually, it
Instagram.
wouldn't surprise me if it's the
Yeah.
one where, the great stuff that I remember about my wife is she farted in her sleep.
Yes.
That is
Yeah.
probably that sounds so much like Robin Williams,
Yeah.
but it is such a human
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. That's it. And he improv a lot of those scenes. And it's not the ADD Robin. It's the Mrs. Doubtfire Robin in a psychiatrist or psychologist mentor's persona. The non-abrasive, non-threatening guy that just wants to help you. The pivotal scene for the character, Matt Damon's character being headstrong, but also has his downfall, which is his pride, doesn't let him succeed. His pride holds him back because he doesn't want anybody to tell him how to do things or tell him what to do, and so he's just going to do it his own way. Meanwhile, he's a genius,
He's smarter than everybody else.
smarter than everybody else. So he's not going to let anybody tell him what to do. So he's buffing floors at a college because he doesn't want to go to a college, right? Like it's just and then the pivotal scene where he's sharing all of these things with Robin, and Robin Williams just repeating to him, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And just seeing that shift where Matt Damon goes through all the emotions of like, yeah, dismissive. And then he gets mad, he gets angry, and then he listens. He actually hears it, and that allows him to embrace his failings, embrace his insecurities that he was masking with all this pride.
Again, I struggle, but there is a deep spirituality to that scene.
Yeah.
That is, as I would interpret it, a truly spiritual Christian message of redemption.
I agree.
Use it, don't use it. By point
No,
was simply,
it's it. It's it. We all carry our shame, and some of us are beaten down by it. Some of us mask it, but we all have this shame in us, and I don't think that was meant for us. The shame is not meant for us. You look at the story of the original humans. It exists that shame entered the story when God did not want it to. And but what God did was not, while he may have kicked them out of the garden, he didn't chastise them in the moment. He actually made them the clothes. It says that God made them the clothes so they wouldn't be ashamed anymore.
Oh,
So instead of letting them remain in their shame and revel in their inadequacies, he actually makes them the thing to help them through that pain and that struggle.
even symbolically, that's a great.
Yeah. So. Yeah. This has been an amazing conversation, brother. I loved having you on the show.
You probably will get me back. I've enjoyed it.
I did mention it in the opening of the episode, but this episode is running in conjunction with the 10th anniversary of Robin Williams passing. I think when we scheduled it, we didn't necessarily have that on our radar, but it is something that's a milestone to recognize that, wow, it's been 10
It
years.
feels like it's been so much more recent. It's still
Yeah.
very, very visceral. I mean,
Yeah.
there are certain people. I mean, we're of an age that there's an entire generation of singers and actors and
Hmm.
athletes and people that we grew up kind of idolizing, for lack of a better word, that pass, and it becomes to seem like there's one a week. But then
Yeah.
there are some.
Yeah.
There are just some that just it's before their time.
Yeah.
Um, it's one thing when they age
Right.
and pass, Betty White,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
but
She
she
lived.
lived a full
Yeah.
life. We
Yeah.
should all be so lucky. But then there's some that leave far too early and under tragically preventable circumstances.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that goes to a couple of them that were in Patch Adams, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Robin Williams.
When we were talking about doing this, and I happened to be going down a Robin Williams clip rabbit hole on YouTube, and I found an interview with where it was a talk show, uh, video cast, I guess podcast videoed, whatever, but it was Philip Seymour Hoffman interviewing Robin Williams
Yes.
not very long before his death. And then given both of them,
Hmm.
it was very poignant.
Yeah.
And just because their topic of conversation was very serious.
Hmm.
Also, it was not a comedic conversation. It was the depths of the human experience
Yeah.
and human condition. And considering that we find out later how Robin Williams struggled with depression, and Philip Seymour Hoffman had his own struggles with
Hmm.
addiction, which likely stemmed from depression. When you find that out, and then you think back about all of these things that he did, and all of these movies where he's just making us laugh hysterically.
Yeah.
And I've referenced it a few times, the depth of emotion or the depth of feeling that he has to have to pull off these characters.
Hmm.
And you realize that there's a trade-off or there's a price to pay
Yeah.
for some of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that just when I saw that one, I had that stopped me down for a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
because I had never even heard of that. I mean, look, I'm a what's the right word? Connoisseur, maybe at glutton for Robin Williams historical clips on the Tonight Show and on
Hmm.
Letterman. One of my favorites is for all of the people that we've named when it comes to any big time actor, they've been on Inside the Actors Studio with James
Yes.
Lipton.
Yeah.
I could sit and watch those episodes.
Hmm.
I mean, seriously, I could binge that more than any binge worthy show that's out.
Hmm.
But he just anytime he would have a serious conversation and let you in
Hmm.
to who he was. When he was doing a stand-up routine, that's walls up.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
full defenses activated.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody wanted. That's what the crowds demanded.
Hmm.
But when he would just start talking,
Yeah.
he was a fascinating person.
Yeah. This is such a fun conversation. Legitimately, dude. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this. I know you were nervous not to give too much behind the
No,
curtain,
that it
but
is. And the thing is, I speak publicly all the time. The more people in front of me, I am more comfortable
yeah.
um, just talking from the cuff in front of 500 people than I am if you stick a microphone in my face. So I was
Yeah.
not sure exactly what this would be, but the closer we got to it, the more excited I became. And
Yeah.
thank you because I didn't realize it was a dream of mine to be on a podcast.
Yeah.
And now I have lived that. and I've got a taste for it, and I enjoyed it. So we'll have to find something else to talk about sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's someone else that also shares your same excitement, and that is my wife, Kristen. She was nervous to be on most of the podcast, and now she is giving us podcast ideas. She's excited. She's got her list. She's got her notes in every episode that she's on now. So it's a conversation, like I told you, like we have this conversation all the time.
Yes,
We have
you and I have
yeah.
6 hours of this conversation a month, regardless.
Regardless. So this is just we're just going to put some mics in front of us and see where it goes. So again, thanks so much for being on it, and yeah, definitely looking forward to having you back.
All right, you're welcome, man. Love you, man.
You too. Thanks so much for listening to the Movies That Make You podcast, where movies are a catalyst for meaningful conversations. We hope you'll give us a like, a share. Let us know you were here over at our Instagram at Movies That Make You. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. So until next time, keep watching movies.